Okay, just to let everyone know, I'm going to start recording. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I am Rodocio Molina, the Deputy Director at NUAP. And with me today is Veronica Dronson, and then Leslie will be right on as soon as she jumps off what she's working on at the moment. Veronica, you want to say a good morning?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Veronica Stronson, and I'm a professor with Michigan State University. So I'm joining from East Lansing, where it was 18 degrees this morning.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, and it snowed yesterday. So it is insane. I'm ready to move to Florida.
Well, yeah. So if you guys want to put, I mean, it's a small group of us. So if you want to say or chat, we usually do what city and state you're in, and so I'm in El Paso today, and we're going to be sunny today as usual.
Nice.
Okay. Let me go ahead and put on the slides. And what is sharing, Veronica? Is it my screen with the PowerPoint? Okay. So we thought for today we'll do an open case rounds, and we can just talk about what, take advantage of the expertise that we have in the group and help you through some of those tough issues. You guys had an opportunity to sign up ahead of time. No one took advantage of that, but that doesn't mean you cannot just start talking now and tell us about an issue. So, or I put the link there in the Google Doc. So if you want to do it now, go ahead. I'll refer to it, but I think we're a small group and we're going to have a good talk, and let's see what we can do. The regular stuff. Thank you to OVW for the space, for the time, for the funding. Here's our team. These slides, just a disclaimer on them. They're just a guide to, and something for you to look for after for substantive reference. Our next community of practice is going to be April 21. It's a Friday. Let's see how that works out for some people. Some people have told me that maybe Friday might work out better. We're going to give it a test because there's actually something that we'll share with you right now that's going to happen that Thursday. And so we're going to try it from Friday, April 21st from 1 to 2. And I wanted to announce to you, you might have seen already in our newsletter, but we just opened up registration for our first in-person conference since 2016. I wonder what happened in between that time to now. A lot, right? Pandemic and administration that we had prior to this, but we're ready to go and to see you in person. And we opened it up for 2 weeks just for our COP members, for law enforcement, and for STOP grantees. So we want to give you guys an opportunity to sign up. If you're waiting to get approval, maybe from a director or something, let me know. I can save you a spot. But once we open it up to everyone, we do tend to fill up fast. We're only allowing 2 people for an organization, but we do want to give our community of practice members priority. I'll put the agenda there right now at the chat as I'm able to, but we have a wide range of subjects. We're going to have a lot of faculty from judges, immigration experts, family law experts, and law enforcement prosecutors also. So it's a really wide range of expertise team there, and it's going to be in a really nice hotel in Boston where we can get together and learn from each other. And yeah, registration's open, and if you need me to hold you a spot while you get approval. Okay.
So Rocio, may I ask you, so it is the same conference repeated, right? So if you go to session 1, you don't have to go to session 2, right? You just choose when you want to go.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for clarifying that. So yeah, session one, it's the same, it's gonna be the same agenda, session one and session two. It's just which 2 days you can come, and that's to take care of all the flow and people that want to attend. So we are gonna do the same show. One set, Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, the same stuff.
So maybe the second session is better because we will have learned from our mistakes from the first one.
Well, we might be more fresh and enthusiastic the first time around. It depends, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, okay. So yeah, Susan, I'll save you a spot there. And I hope you can come. And then, oh man, I wish Leslie could come in for this because me and Veronica were saying she really gets really excited. I love it. And this is exciting news. But we have some bigger news than the conference to share with you. And she didn't make it in time. So I'll let Veronica get us started on it. But this is really huge for immigrant survivors.
Yeah, so there you have it, right? The CIS announced today that they are opening a new center. It's called HEART, the HEART Center, and they already started operations in January, or I think they put it together somehow. But anyway, they are more or less operational, and what they are doing is they are going to be doing forms, the I-601A, which is the waiver of inadmissibility for people who have accumulated unlawful presence in the United States, the I-918, which is the U-Visa application, the I-730, which is the form that people who had been granted asylum, they need to complete that form to bring their relatives who are abroad to come join them. And also the I-360, which is the Violence Against Women's Act. They are not including, even though the I-360 is also for special immigrant juveniles, they are not going to be adjudicating the special immigrant juveniles there yet. Mm-hmm. But they are going to be considering other forms that have to do more with humanitarian relief for victims. So, so they have 150 people working on the files right now, and they are going to start hiring. They are fully funded to hire 330 people. So they'll be posting the job announcements, and it's going to be fully virtual in a few months. And so you could apply and you can work from home in your PJs. So the idea is that they want to attract very good personnel who may not want to move because of family reasons. And so with this, you would get hired and you can work virtually. So everything is going to be pretty nice the way they are making it sound. Also trying to reduce. So they said their 3 goals are to be consistent with the way they adjudicate forms. You see, like you never know, right? Like what officer you get, and then some officer may deny an application while another one may grant it. They also want to improve the quality of the services that they provide, and they want to make sure that they reduce backlogs. So those were the 3 things that they mentioned at the meeting we just had at noon this afternoon. It was a short meeting, but it was, very, very, very good news for the clients we represent.
Yeah, and then the big thing, I mean, that's going to be the efficiency, right? We're hoping we've been trying to find a way to get people the work permit and the approval faster. And in 2021, when we got the bona fide determination, it still wasn't happening because we still didn't have enough adjudicators, and this is going to resolve that, right?
It is going to improve, like definitely Leslie asked, right? Like why just these forms, right? Like why not other forms? Like, doing the work permit for people who are, married to, you know, people who come on visas, right? Like not permanent, but, the non-immigrant visas. The removal of a condition, right? Like, why wouldn't they adjudicate that form too? But, of course, if we ask them to take care of a bunch of forms, then we're going to see the same issue with the backlog, right? And so maybe it makes sense to have smaller, smaller caseload with these forms, and then see how efficient they actually get, and see if they can take on more. If they are going to hire more than 300 people, it's going to take them a while to fully train all those people as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know this summer in August was when we had our first meeting with them where we proposed this. And
Mhm.
I know that, I mean, I don't know, maybe NUAP was the only one that was pushing for this, but I know that we put a lot of work and efforts into trying to get this. So this is a big win, and hopefully we do see faster adjudication and better quality of it. And definitely, be willing to provide, be a resource to them and provide training and helping them recruit really good. I wonder if there have to be lawyers, but adjudicators that are trained in these issues so that we get them hired up. That's going to be the next effort, right? To try to get them staffed up with a good team.
Yeah.
And this is awesome.
And then they really don't require that you be an attorney, right? Like I would say at least 90% of the people, at least in my jurisdiction here in Michigan, right, in Detroit, I would say about 90% of them don't aren't attorneys, right? And so, attorneys are good for some for some of the work they do, right? But to adjudicate a form, as long as they are very well trained, I don't think that they are going to require a law degree.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. And so that's what Leslie's working on. She wanted to get this out there. We saw a newspaper article, and USCIS took out, made an announcement, email to everybody, letting them know about this new heart center. And they're going to have an information session for the community on this. It is April 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern. And I didn't see a registration link for it yet. They just announced the time, I guess, so you can hold the slot. So if you want to learn more about this program and the opportunities that it provides for immigrant survivors, and maybe they'll start talking about that hiring process or how to apply. The next session that they're going to have after this announcement today is going to be April 20th. And I'll share that with you guys as I get that information. So here's the meat about what we were going to talk about. I mean, this person looks like they're overwhelmed by the stack of papers, this big case that is overwhelming. What issues did you guys want to talk about? Or is there a case you want to take advantage of this brainstorm? And then Veronica and I and Susan and Christina on the line, Victoria. Is there a case where you want to talk about and get ideas here with your colleagues? I have some other questions, like to get you maybe to think about what you're seeing, or maybe just to get some feedback from you, but I want to have the space open. We've had several TA calls these few past months, Veronica, on VAWA confidentiality. It's still being a big issue that we're seeing. That it's hard for it to be a reality for a lot of survivors, especially when they're with the adjudicators. We recently had a TA where an adjudicator, what did they do, Veronica? They
Is this the case where CIS went to the landlord
Yeah, and that's not really in
of the
family.
victim?
Yeah.
Mhm.
That wasn't really in family law, but that's kind of the example that we're seeing again, where they're trying to get contacting a landlord of the abuser to verify residency of the
Of the
applicant.
victim. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we thought that was really egregious. Susan, did you have something to share?
I don't really have anything currently. I'm trying to think if I have any situations. I've had a lot of relocation cases recently, but not really like immigration hasn't really been a lot of them are immigrants and have their own immigration case going on, but it hasn't, like while I'm working with the immigration attorney, they're doing their thing, I'm doing my thing. The immigration piece hasn't really impacted the
family law.
custody, the family law that much. But I have had a couple of relocation cases where like litigants fled because of abuse. But I don't know. But I don't really have any like burning questions at this minute.
Hey, Leslie, you just joined.
I
Nice to
did.
see you. You look very nice.
It's been a
It
busy
must be
morning.
because of the big announcement today. But
Wait, you're muted.
we just shared with everyone about the directorate and the Heart Center. And since they're not any burning questions right now, and maybe there's more that you would want to say about it. Veronica, maybe how we came about getting it, or why this is such a good thing. We talked about the efficiency, the dedicated adjudicators, but anything that you want to share would be great.
Sure. And Veronica, I don't want to repeat what you might have said before. Sorry, I'm late. I'm trying to just get announcements out to the field and things like that. But the other thing that happened today is the Department of Labor, the people that do OSHA, are launching a new U visa certification and T visa endorsement program. So there's a lot happening around, U visas and T visas that are like super great and important in terms of hopefully, not only more people certifying at the Department of Labor, but also, for family law clients, it means they're going to get faster access to work authorization ultimately over time, which is a big deal because there have been long delays in the for VAWA self-petitioners where the abusers are U.S. citizens or lawful permanent residents, we see delays, and also the 5-year wait to work authorization for U visas should start coming down over time. So we're really excited about that. And I guess the other thing is that you'll have a team of adjudicators who are just doing these kinds of work, which means protection orders, family court findings that you get in your family court cases about findings that the domestic violence exists, that child abuse exists, things like that will be super helpful in speeding up your client's access to, work authorization and protection from deportation. Veronica, do you see other implications kind of from a family law perspective?
No, I was just thinking with the fact that some of them are not really abuse, like the asylees trying to get their family over, or the 601A waivers, right? Like that, they are just like a basic application that is absolutely taking a very, very long time.
Mhm.
But I was just, I was curious on how is it that they decided to do those. And I don't know if it was more based on the backlog that they are trying to reduce.
I mean, I think that as I understand it, I don't know about the 601s, but I do know about as to the reunification of asylees and refugees with their family members, both it's a humanitarian need. And if you think about it, it's people who are in the home countries that are still at risk. All asylees and refugees have fled something and have had, the people that are being reunified with your family members, you could have a trafficker, you could have a domestic violence perpetrator, you could have people in the home country that might be trying to retaliate through those family members. And I think that's how they thought about it. It is a form of relief that includes some of the same dangers as exist in the VAWA TU caseload. Is kind of how I think they saw it, which is why it wasn't just random that they were put together. I think they saw them as they were really trying to say, we have this opportunity to invest resources and reduce backlogs for critical populations. And, I'm ecstatic that they chose the VAWAs and the U's. And that we're hoping, Veronica, as you well know, that they're going to include, as they staff up, other case types, like the battered spouse waivers, like the T visas, like SIJ, which would be fantastic. And I think, the other thing is, we all know people who might be interested in going to work for USCIS in these jobs, because they're going to hire 330 adjudicators. And I'd love as many of them as possible to come from our ranks, because it would make a huge difference, and they're great jobs. Not trying to lose public interest lawyers, but family, but we all may know people who have been interns of ours or who were colleagues, and they're going to be fully remote, so nobody has to move. And they're trying to hire nationally. So anything anybody on this call can do to, I've told them we're going to try to get the word out to try to get them, so I want people who apply who understand crime victimization, who don't have to be taught that from scratch. Because it would be amazing how much more quickly they can adjudicate and how faster they can speed up adjudications if they have people who really understand gender-based violence, domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, who get hired into these jobs, which would be fantastic.
And we have an acronym for them, right, Leslie?
Yeah, it's called, oh my God, it's a mouthful. No, it's not a mouthful. It's called the Heart Service Center. They basically have taken all the adjudicators that they basically allowed adjudicators to opt in and out. So everybody who's come over has come over voluntarily, which is great, because hopefully it means it's the people who really want to do these kind of cases, and not the people who just got assigned there and might have been causing us trouble.
Leslie, why is it, and I learned this through working with this, why is it important that they have their own directive?
Because
this is new, right? Before they didn't have their own directive.
Yeah,
now
they're having their own service center. So they're not going to be in the Vermont Service Center or the Nebraska Service Center they're in this humanitarian service center, which means, so what happened in 2015 when we convinced Mayorkas to staff up the VAWA unit? He added a whole bunch of adjudicators, and then they were living in the Vermont Service Center, which is a structure where pretty much, other than the VAWA unit, everything they do else is fee driven. So their priorities of the management is fee driven. So what would happen is you trained up all the adjudicators, and then they would steal them for H-1Bs and wherever they thought they needed it from a fee generating perspective, because that's how the management in that structure, that was the environment, right? That's how you move up the chain of command, and that's how you get reviewed and everything else. By taking these cases out and putting them in their own service center, the entire management structure of that service center is about humanitarian relief and crime victimization, victims of crime and abuse. And so you can imagine the evaluations are going to look different. All the metrics that happen within a work environment are going to be totally different. And all of the people that get hired to do this are doing this. They're doing one of these case types that's in this service center. So yes, there may be times that people that are doing the U's move to the VAWAs and vice versa, or they help out, but it's all the same. It's motivated by the same goal. It's like setting up a company almost where its whole structure. It's more like, you know, our work as public interest lawyers is very different than, you know, lawyers that work in a firm in terms of the motivations and what we're trying to accomplish and how we measure our accomplishments, et cetera. And so what'll happen is you'll have people stay, and the longer they stay and the more expertise they gain, the quicker they can adjudicate, just like any good protection order court, or any of us can see a mile away the difference between somebody who's telling us their story, where we see all of the indicia and evidence of abuse, and we know it's a legitimate story, versus, you know, because USCIS also sees people who are trying this as their, you know, they'll make up the abuse. They also see fraudulent cases, and they'll be more easily able to sort out those without harming adjudications for victims and without unnecessary requests for further evidence and the like.
Mhm.
I don't know if this is, I hope it's helpful information to you all.
No, I think it really is. The other acronym I was going for were FANGs, which is former advocate now in government, because you have a lot of advocates that you work with, and later when they work in
A
government.
lot of people that have been involved in making this happen that worked as advocates prior. So
So has the announcement, has it come out of how to apply or what to do, or is that
job
pending?
announcement they said today was going to come out in the next week.
Okay.
And we're putting out a newsletter, like as we speak. It may come out before we get on this call. And what we're giving you is the news article that discusses this, the announcement from USCIS, and then we're also including the announcement on the new U-Visa certification by OSHA from the Department of Labor. And then I've written like a cover note. So let me just tell you, HART stands for Humanitarian Adjustment, Removing Conditions, and Travel Documents.
Yeah.
Oh no. What?
Even though the removal of the condition is not one of the forms, that was
Yes.
something that I'm
No,
like,
but yes.
okay.
Yet, I mean,
Yeah.
I think they want to get, I mean, they've said they want to get there. So it's a question, you know, that's one other thing we've been arguing for years. So
So Christina is asking, where does one go to apply? So the article I read said that the announcement for openings is coming out tomorrow.
okay.
So they still don't have that, but the announcement I saw said Friday today.
Okay,
I mean,
we'll
tomorrow.
be sending it out to all of our lists. You'll all get it, so you can circulate it to everybody you know. And just to tell you, I don't know why they didn't mention it today, but the person running it is a woman named Tracy Parsons, and she ran the VAWA unit like back in 2013, 14, 15. She was tremendous, and I worked with her very closely to train a ton of adjudicators back then. So I think, I mean, and she's somebody who kind of worked her way up the chain of command at service center operations. So she's somebody who really both knows how to work, like how to move things in DHS and USCIS to actually make things happen. And she really understands, you know, VAWA and U's and T's and all of those. So yeah, she's great.
We also shared about the conference. I let them know that they're very much invited and VIPs, and we want them to go, and to let me know if maybe they need to get a approval from someone higher up so I can save them a spot or whatnot. But that was something else we also covered today. Well, I have some discussion questions, and let's see, you know, maybe we have something here to share. We kind of covered this open, but it's like what issues you're seeing in family court.
Anybody else?
That was maybe too general, especially if you didn't come here right now with the issue. So I'm going to go to the next one. I wanted to see if you guys were seeing some improvement in language access in your local court since the last time we talked. And actually, here on our community of practice, we have a podcaster person, Susan Pearlstein and Pat and one of the judges and Leslie have a upcoming language access podcast that I'm going to share with you once it gets approved by OVW about what's happening in their local courts with language access and strategies. But once that's approved, I'll share it with you guys. Just wanted to let you know it's upcoming. But are you guys seeing improvement of language access in the courts? They're seeing.
No.
What are you guys seeing?
No. No improvement, unfortunately. I mean, a little bit, and I think like now Pennsylvania does have a plan and the court has a plan. But just today, actually, I was in a meeting and the sheriff's office came and they're serving protection orders. And they're also like, so they're more involved in serving protection orders now in the city. And they have a, you know, people can call them and say, oh, and we were talking about gun relinquishment under Act 79. So they have this whole process, but then, you know, shouldn't be surprised, but the sheriff who was, you know, they're doing a great job and they took on a lot of this work from the police department, which is great. But he was like, well, I didn't know how to talk to this person. You know, I didn't know what we're supposed to do when the person doesn't speak English. Like, he didn't know that the city has a contract with Language Line, that he should have been calling Language Line. He didn't have the number for Language Line. And they have some papers, you know, like they give out if they try and go, say, under a protection order, confiscate weapons. And if the person's not home, they have a sheet that they leave and says, you've been ordered to relinquish your weapon, yada, yada. And we were like, well, do you have these in any languages? He's like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. We should do that. So there's that. And then sometimes in court, you know, people have been waiting still. We have problems with even Spanish interpreters, and it's not the interpreter's fault. There's only 2 of them for the building, for the whole family court building, which is dependency and juvenile and delinquency and adoption and domestic relations. So sometimes you have to wait a really long time. Sometimes things get continued because there's no interpreter. I think they're trying to do better, but not perfect, obviously.
I think a lot of the access issues have to do with your judge. At least in Michigan, I have noticed that there are judges who go out of their way to help. I had a case, it was a child case, and the parents were, the dad was in Mexico, the mom was in Guatemala, and the mom was indigenous. And so the judge managed to get a Spanish interpreter who could then talk to the person who spoke the indigenous language over the phone. And then that was the way they were communicating with the court to make sure that the mother understood, you know. And there are judges who are like, oh, you're Guatemalan, so you speak Spanish, right? When in fact, we have so many different dialects. And so I think, you know, when the judges really want to make sure that people are that it's important for people to understand what's going on, even if they have to postpone it, right? Like even if, because a lot of the, at least here from Michigan, we don't have people who speak those dialects, but a lot of them are in California. And even if the judge has to change the time of the hearing, they would actually accommodate. So I think that's an improvement.
Susan.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
What was I going to say? Oh, I did have a question about admitting evidence when the party doesn't speak the language. So say you have a piece of evidence and you want the witness to look at it, like to authenticate it, or it's the other side's evidence and you want to admit it into evidence, but the witness can't read it because it's not in your language, in their language. And it's a very long document. I'm not sure, if anyone has come across that, like how you get through that hump without having someone interpret the entire document on the record.
Right. I'd done it by interpreting the entire, or, the document on the record enough so they know what it is, type of thing.
Okay,
For
Yeah.
because they don't need to say they believe it. They're trying to authenticate something, right? The other thing I've heard people do, I mean, it's not cheap, but if it's your evidence, you could get it translated in advance. So that you're
Right.
actually giving them a authentic translated copy of whatever. Veronica, other ideas?
So I think when the document is long, right, like if you have an interpreter who says this is a summary, right, of this, I have read, the whole document, this is a summary, blah, 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 right, and the interpreter stands by the translation, that is enough. At least it has worked with my cases. In immigration court, the judge had asked us he wanted the law from Mexico to determine if our client had firmly resettled in Mexico before coming to the US. And so we gave him the 60 pages long Mexican law in Spanish. And then we did like a 2-page summary, right? That we said, this is the summary of what it says. And we definitely did like different page numbers, right? Like showing the judge where we had gotten it from. So, I sent the judge's clerks who could go check it, right, to make sure that we were in line about the translation we provided.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really good idea. Because that's much more economical and because the idea is for them to authenticate the document, right? Yeah. So I was going to ask you a question, Susan, with the sheriff. Are there, the fact that they now know that these interpreter services are available, I'm wondering if it's something that, someone could come train their staff on, is like, how do you think about when you call and whatever. We do have some tools we can share with you. Because you have some interesting issues that could come up where people like say they speak the language and they may not, or, say they don't when they do. And so we did develop a tool for law enforcement of how to assess language ability at the crime scene that might be useful to the sheriff as they think about, when they need to call interpreters. And one of them is, basically getting, and what's nice about this was OVW sponsored and funded. And it has a little thing on the bottom. So it can raise their comfort level, because part of it is anytime their officers are in doubt whether somebody's going to understand this, they should get an interpreter, and they can choose to do that. And it like gives them permission to make the decision themselves based on their own observation, rather than waiting for somebody to ask or not ask for. Because my concern is, if they rely on the person saying, well, I understand English and I don't need an interpreter, and it's a lie, then what happens when you try to enforce it and then they defend and say, I didn't get it in my language, when they actually caused the situation where they didn't get the interpretation?
Right, exactly.
So,
Yeah, I think, I know that Women Against Abuse, we do have a domestic violence law enforcement committee, and that's where we were talking. So I do think that that's in the works. And hopefully, I would happily pass that, and I can get that from the NIWAP
Yeah, I'm looking
library.
for it
I
right
would
now.
happily pass that along with that to them.
Yeah.
We're also looking for where to go in the next year to train the law enforcement. And so we have a few slots open, and all it needs to, it's one of the things I coordinate. And so it would just be somebody within law enforcement. That's just the requirement, or prosecutor that wants to do the training. And if they want to do it virtually or in person, and it's taught by law enforcement and prosecutors, and they cover language access and
Right.
tips and strategies and things that work for them. And it's good. Well, we can also expand, of course, to do U-Visa and VAWA from them, and U-Visa certification. that's just in the menu of things that they're training, but those are the sites we're looking for places to go in the next year, and that would be.
I would love for you guys to come to Philly. That would be awesome. I'm gonna, if you want to send me something, I'll forward it to the people who lead this group. And then, you know, because we do meet every other month. So that would be great.
Yeah, this is,
I would love for you to come to Philly.
yeah, and we could, I mean, basically, we have a curriculum that it's like a full day or a half day, whatever they want. And then we've got officers who train on it. And, you know, this sheriff that, you know, if they're interested, they could, you know, lead it. And if they have like where they do their training for their people, and they could invite local jurisdiction. It could be, you know, sometimes it's a local sheriff's office or a local law enforcement agency, police department, and then they invite people, sometimes they invite people within a 2-hour drive of wherever, so that they're reaching other communities as well. But we absolutely could do that, and we'd love to come to Philly. So we'll send you as follow-up we have like a training flyer. Rosia, you'll just need to make sure the links are up to date, and then we'll send you, I think what I'll do is I'll send you a link to our, I'll send you the particular tool around language access and a link to our training page of materials for law enforcement and prosecutors. So you can get a sense of, in case that, you know, they want more. And when you see it, you'll be able to pick out the stuff you want to use.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
And I'll go ahead and send it to the whole group, to the flyer, since we're
Yeah.
looking nationwide on where to plan to go in the next year. Well, since you don't have horror stories to share, how about, you know, those are the thorns. Here's some of the roses. What about success stories? We shared the big success story.
Big success today.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I just want to let you know, Veronica was part of the team of people that helped us like write this thing up and push for it with USCIS. So I want to publicly thank her for that.
Yeah.
So anything, like any of you, what's, you know, a case that you've won or something that's happened with a client that you're excited to share, you know, that you want to share, that kind of thing. Anybody?
I guess I have a couple. I have one client who's an undocumented immigrant. Now she's getting help from Hias in Pennsylvania, in Philly. And she had, her abuser is a citizen. They moved all over the place. And she ended up fleeing while she was pregnant, right before she had the baby. She went from Pennsylvania, they were like on the West Coast in Oregon, then they were someplace else, and then they were in the Philadelphia suburbs, and not in Philadelphia. And she fled to New Jersey and went to a shelter. She had the baby in New Jersey and then went home to a shelter after she had the baby. And he, the day after the baby was filed for custody in Philly. And she came to us after there was already an order. She just was like having postpartum depression. She has a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety from all the abuse. And she showed up in court. Nobody questioned jurisdiction. They just made an agreement for like 50-50 or something. It was terrible. It was a horrible agreement. And then I don't remember what happened that she came to us. Oh, he was violated the protection order, was doing some other stuff. She was really scared to give the baby to him. And so we filed to change that. She ended up filing a PFA in Pennsylvania and in New Jersey. And it got really messed up because she shouldn't have done that. And the New Jersey court dismissed the PFA and said, go forward in Philly, but really she should have gone forward with both PFA and custody in New Jersey, because Philly didn't have jurisdiction for custody. So we found a pro bono attorney in New Jersey to help her there. She is revitalizing the PFA case there so she can drop her PFA case here, because there the PFAs are forever and in Pennsylvania, they're only 3 years. And he filed for contempt. We were before a judge and I said, this should not have, and I had just picked up the case. And I said, this should not, jurisdiction, this order should never even have been entered. Pennsylvania doesn't have jurisdiction. And the judge was like, well, do you want me to deal with the contempt right now or not? And I knew she was going to dismiss his contempt. So I said, okay, but we're not conceding to jurisdiction any longer. And so I had to do that separately, but so she dismissed his contempt and I filed a motion to transfer for lack of jurisdiction and or inconvenient forum. And the judge granted it, I think, on the wrong basis. I think she should have, that Pennsylvania doesn't have jurisdiction to modify it because under the UCCJA, they wouldn't have exclusive continuing jurisdiction because they wouldn't have had original jurisdiction in the first
Right.
place. But instead, she did it under inconvenient form, which was fine with me. It's the same result. And
Right.
so the custody got bounced to New Jersey, and that same pro bono lawyer is helping her in New Jersey. She's got the immigration attorney helping her. I also wrote a letter for the immigration case to help support her application. So that was a success story so far. I think it's good. It's really good. And it was great that we got everybody working together to help her.
Fantastic. So great. And Susan, I want to say, the case that you helped us with, the highest case with the SIJ kid, that came out really well. You guys all
Oh, awesome.
collectively somehow turned that judge around.
That's great.
So it all worked out, but I mean, a lot of different people were involved, so I really appreciate it.
Oh, good. Yeah, the other thing about Highest is they just got a fellow who's going to start in September, and he's going to exclusively work on like crime victim relatives, families, and their applications. Like, you know, if a relative is the victim of the crime, and that can adjust their, because they realize that they have like sometimes whole families that could have their status adjusted because of the crime. And so they built a project right around, like specifically for that. So that's going to start in September. So that's exciting.
Very cool. Great. Alex, I know you joined late. I'm wondering if we're asking people to kind of share good stories or questions and problems that you'd like to problem solve with the group kind of thing.
The only thing that has happened to me is we've had some issues regarding spousal support and that affidavit to support. So I was able to write a small brief to educate our court on that issue. And my client was able to get spousal support for 2 years.
Great.
So that was the one thing that happened that was good. I haven't had anything in the last couple of years that was bad, nor have any of our lawyers at Legal Aid.
Good. Well, I just want you to, maybe I'll call on Veronica. What's really great, Alex, about that is Veronica just published a whole new law review article on affidavits of support that's really fantastic. So maybe I'll let Veronica tell you a little about it.
Oh, please, that would be great.
Yeah, I would love to see that article. I just did one where the sponsor also sponsored, we were able to get child support for, he sponsored client and her child, and they have another child together. So it was kind of confusing about what her household was for the percentage of poverty. I think the court was confused on that. Maybe I was too. But it worked out okay. She got a decent support order, but I'm not sure if it was like actually calculated correctly. Because, you know what I mean? Like when you're looking at the household, does it include all the people in her household have to be at that level of 125% of poverty? Do you know what I mean? But I'm interested to read your article.
Veronica, you could probably answer that part here.
Yeah, thanks. I'll put the link on the chat in a little bit as soon as I find it. Yeah, so I did it basically focusing on domestic violence issues and also focusing on the fact that someone who may be a U.S. citizen who is being abused by her immigrant spouse may end up having to support her abuser for life, right? And so it's called affidavits are forever, sort of like diamonds are forever. So I'll post the link. But coming back to the issue of household, it's very specific, right? Like most times, if you have someone who fled the abuser and went to live with her sister who is married and has 5 children, then that household is not going to be all of those people, right? Because they are not, they are just letting her stay there because of the abuse. And so that has been my argument that, it's a household of one, even though, she's not permanently living with this additional family, right? Because that has been an issue for some judges on how do you determine who is a member of your household, right? And so they usually want to know, is this person contributing in any way to your support, right? Because if you are saying yes, then the need for support is going to be less for the victim who fled,
So
right?
for-
And so you need to be very strategic on how you frame it to make sure that then the judge is not going to say, okay, well, your poverty, your poverty level is not at 125% because you're actually getting more money and more support from other people, right? And so you actually don't need it. And so, when judges are not that receptive to domestic violence issues, you may end up with a judge who says, well, your sister is supporting you. Like, why should I order him to support you? And now he signed the affidavit. So,
but Veronica, the question I think Susan was posing is, so if you have, let's say the abuser sponsored the woman, the victim, and her child, and then they had a child together, is it a household size of, like, how do you calculate? That was the question. How do you calculate the household size in that scenario? There isn't anybody else in the household.
So if they're still living together, the household is a family of 4.
No, but if the abuser's they're separate. So they're
So it's
separate.
They're
3 people.
separated.
It's 3 people.
Yeah. So it's 3 people together under because I think the court was saying under the affidavit of support, he only had the obligation to support her and his not his child who he sponsored. He sponsored her and her child, and then they had a child together. So I think the court was saying he didn't have to support the whole family to that level. He had to support the mom and that child at that level, and then the other child gets like regular child support under the regular calculation.
Is that correct?
And I'm not sure, I don't know, I wasn't 100% sure, but the way it worked out with the numbers, it didn't really matter.
Yeah. But
I was going to say, because if he's also paying child support for the U.S. citizen child, right, then that is basically going to be a non-issue because he did not sign an affidavit of support for the child who was born here.
so the household.
Right, but it's
size-
all together in one case. So where I filed for child and spousal support using the I-864, plus he has the obligation to support their child. So they were all in one case, all in one order.
So I would have argued that the household is all of them, the 2 children plus the wife, and not separate the U.S. citizen child. Because on top of it, he has that obligation to support the U.S. citizen child.
So you're saying that, so
Right.
Veronica, as I understand both from what you're saying and kind of reading your article and the research, we also have something we've published on this, that what you're saying is you treat the household as 3. So he has to support 3 people at 125% of poverty under the affidavit contract piece. And then in addition, he has the obligation to support the citizen child that's his child for
Mhm.
child,
For child support.
regular child support rules.
Yeah.
And that's what's interesting. I think that's the struggle. And I think we might actually want to do with you, Veronica, a whole session on this, because it kind of is counterintuitive, because to a judge, it might look like they're double dipping, right? That the kid, mom, but when you think about it, the cost of what it really costs to support a child, it's not double dipping at all. Actually, I'm sure you're, you know,
I think I would need a lot of support, like from like your article or some case law to get that through, because that's not the way that they did it. Actually, I think they did it as a household of 3 or a household of 2 for mom and the child that he sponsored, and then the other child was sort of calculated separately.
Yeah,
So
I
maybe
mean, we can
our court
definitely
did do it
talk.
wrong. And I filed exceptions. I filed to go to a judge, and the judge got confused and was just like, I'm not touching this. And then the client wanted to just leave it as it was because she was getting some money and she's okay with that. And, you know.
well, that makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah, mathematically, I mean,
That's
all the
interesting,
math
though.
around this is quite interesting, because Veronica, again, it's any year that from the time she got lawful permanent residency until you're in court, where she didn't have 100, you know, her household didn't have 125% of poverty, you can enforce the affidavit for that year, right? So if they've been.
And that's what the judges do year by year, right? Okay, this year you were working, you didn't need anything, so we're going to skip that year. Okay, the following year you were laid off, and now we did this whole year of support, right? And so you do that calculation year by year.
Yeah.
Well, we're hitting the top of the half
Okay.
hour to finish this. Leslie, maybe you can come up with one of your genius Excel sheets with that
Well, I'm
goes
thinking
like a
maybe there's
worksheet
some
with.
There's some tool we could create here.
Yeah.
It's definitely something I will talk to Veronica about. Veronica, we might think of doing a future session just on kind of the math of this. You know, we can
Like
give people,
calculating the.
how do you calculate
yeah.
it? What's the best arguments for what, you know, so that people.
Yeah,
can
and I
have-
love the case there's a case that came out of Philly, Love v. Love, that
Yes.
a colleague from
Yeah.
Women Against Abuse. I love that case.
Yeah.
Will you share it with me, Susan? And then Veronica, you're gonna share me your link. I'm gonna
Yeah.
send everybody the flyer. Go ahead.
Lucille, we have one,
I cite that Love case in my
Yeah.
article.
and we
So
cite
I'm
it
so
too.
sorry, but I have another Zoom at
Go,
2:30
go, go.
and I'm already late.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
And Rocio,
Bye.
we'll also share, we have a bench card we've done for judges on affidavit of support that we can share with people as well, that we just published a few months ago. So.
Okay,
Oh, awesome. Cool.
Great.
well,
Awesome.
Great to
I'm
see
glad I
everybody.
I'm gonna
made
send
it
everybody
today.
the follow up, and everybody, thank you for sharing and for being here.
Congratulations on the big win. That's awesome.
Yeah,
So
it
psyched.
is.
So we'll be getting
Bye.
you, we'll send around a notice about it and then add as soon as we know how people can apply. So,
Awesome.
cool.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.